Hey, how's life? Are the little ones down and everything sorted out over there?
Yeah, yeah. The little ones are
Good.
down, do this and then chase the older ones to bed.
Oh yeah. Tell me about it. I have a teenage son that likes to stay up all night playing video games, even when he's got to go to school early. That's one of our challenges over here, but maybe
Yeah,
that's
I
TMI.
yeah.
So
That's parenting, right? The gift that keeps
yeah,
on
well,
taking.
I'm so gonna steal that line. That's brilliant, actually.
Yeah,
Um, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. So
no,
it's
absolutely.
the most rewarding of all things. So
Yes.
so you know, I think I gave you the heads up. We know you've already recorded some of this for me. So but we might as well take another cut. Tell me, John, how I can't. We've been working together on courses. I'm trying to even remember how many years back. It's been quite a while that we've been working together, and
It
you
was like
were what?
2013, I think, was the first
Yeah,
time
so
that
seven
I
seven
taught. And I'm
years.
trying to
So.
remember if it was this course or an earlier version of this course or a
No,
forensics
so
one.
I know we've gone through. I've updated the outlines on the course site for you at least once. So there's been at least a couple, and I apologize because it's been so many years of doing training courses here now. They tend to blur a little while too. So I
Yeah,
just it's been as always. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to work with you. You are one of the most consummate professionals and easiest guys to work with, and folks always love your course. Tell me how you got into this and what your background is. So, for the folks on the website,
sure.
tell us where you came from and how you wound up being such a expert educator, but in these areas. Tell me a story,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Uncle John.
So I've been working in security for 20 years. It's what I've done for my entire career. And actually, how I got into it was by complete accident. Um, I started writing computer programs at like 6 years old. I got my start in security by, pirating software at like 12 years old. I forget how old I was. So by the time I go to college, I'm like, I'm done with this computer stuff. I've been doing it for 12 years. I get a degree in theoretical astrophysics. And it was paid for by the United States Air Force. So I was going to the military. Ended up hurting my knees and shoulder, basically being a young man and doing stupid things and getting hurt, and needed a job because it was right at the end of my college career as I was graduating, and well, kind of fell right into doing IT and cybersecurity work in the late '90s for Ernst and Young. But I think the trainer a couple of slots ago was talking about how a lot of people in cybersecurity use military terminology. Well, prior to PayPal and eBay and electronic commerce, the only people who really cared were military, and it brought those biases in. And a lot of people, my age and older, at least you typically have some affiliation to military organization. Um, so how I got into teaching cyber threat intelligence is, that's applying intelligence disciplines to cybersecurity. And while there are lots of incompatibilities of a military mindset of cybersecurity, certainly I think the way that an intelligence analyst would look at things is very, I would argue, very applicable to how we do cybersecurity, because ultimately we talk about doing technical things, and there are technical aspects of my course, but cybersecurity is not about technology. Technology is a tool, like a hammer, saw, whatever. What matters is the intent and purpose of the person wielding that tool, what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish, and how you defend against that. You have to have knowledge of some knowledge of what they intend to do and how they go about doing that. So it's kind of an interesting way of bringing the human back into cybersecurity and how we defend things. Because, like I said, there's a human being at the other end of the keyboard who's making decisions, has intentions, and has desires, and a lot of those things manifest themselves in unique ways. There's a colleague of mine who makes malware detection rules, and as human beings, we like labeling things and saying, okay, this is emotet, or this is trickbot, or this is whatever. He creates very general rules, right? Doesn't attribute anything, but like one was an RTF file, basically a rich text format file, where the first 1,000 characters or so aren't actually letters, because you're trying to embed scripting content and obfuscation in there. It's something that would never be. And we see by looking at all this stuff, hey, I can make an interesting detection tool, because the way criminals try to obfuscate their content in a text file or an RTF file or a maldoc or anything really creates other detection opportunities and other prevention opportunities. So I spent a lot of my time developing this course, and every time I teach it, there's new elements to it. Is how to apply kind of the intelligence framework to cybersecurity problems, to understand the attackers and how to disrupt their attacks, to protect organizations, and really how to deal with kind of some of the interesting deception that goes on. There's a model in a module in the course where I talk about malware that looks like it came from a terrorist organization, had all the tidbits in there, but being able to look deeper and say, okay, here are some oddities I see in how I type text that says, no, it's really a copy and paste. It's not really an attempt to be a terrorist organization doing terroristy things. So there's a lot of just anecdotes like that go into the course. I try to include a lot of exercises, but on the front end, it's also how to think about things, because how human beings observe information, especially when you become an experienced professional, where you have the benefit of a large body of history behind you of things, of your own war stories, right? That also becomes a problem, because then, you interpret current events via the frame of things you've seen in the past, even though that might necessarily not be true, or how things are can appear biased. So there's lots of reporting all the time, on cybersecurity stuff and security companies doing this, that, and the other thing to find threats and jumping to conclusions, and really, not doing anybody any good. The most likely, outcome of that is just wasting time. But there's been a lot of very high profile stories in cybersecurity that were just wrong. I want to say it was Supermicro. I'm trying to forget. This is like 2 years ago, where they had the little
the chip, I believe.
Chip.
Yeah.
From Bloomberg, right?
Exactly. And then, now everybody had the question is, why would you even bother to do that when you could just do it in software? Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
well, right. Yeah. I mean, the immense amount of time that wasted on everybody trying to find this, right? Because, there's a back door in there. It's okay. Well, if there's a back door, it's got to communicate over TCP/IP. So everybody's looking at NetFlow for it, right? In government, in military, everybody. And it was just, I don't know how they got it wrong. It was such.
And then they doubled down on it too, right? Everybody said no.
They still hold to it.
They still. And we still have yet to see anything of it.
It's
yeah. But
so
go on.
There's a lot of information that we professionals need to vet, right? And like, so the Bloomberg story was one, right? I was working for a security vendor. This lands on my lap, and I'm like, this is BS. And you tossed it back. It's like, we're gonna need more analysis than that. It's like, all right, well, I guess there goes my next 48 hours. So there's lots of, the industry's full of ways of detecting things. And I'm getting my PhD in informatics, but really it's cybersecurity machine learning, right? And we hear a lot about machine learning and AI. And I don't talk a lot about it in this course, but I do make fleeting references, because what we don't really do in cybersecurity machine learning, the same thing we don't really do with threat intelligence, or I should say don't do enough of, is really understanding what the data means and the context it exists in, and how much really can you interpret and infer from that. What really can you infer from just a domain name? And though people say, oh, this is these couple of data points and these couple of pivots proves that it's APT 28, which is, I forget whether it's the FSB or GRU, the Russian intelligence.
Some
And it's like,
bear. Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
it was one of the bears,
One of the
fancy
bears. Lots of
bear,
bears.
sexy
Lots of bears.
bear, or whatever. Um,
You realize it's the rule of the internet. You probably someone's going to use that from now on, and there's going to be some APT that they're going to use that joke now that you've made it.
Oh, well, that's fine. There's just a couple of my colleagues who do create fictional APT groups with names, right? Just for fun to see if they ever catch on, right? One's like Hot Cousin. I forget exactly what they are. Yeah.
I think there's a time honored thing. Is what's the funniest thing we can sneak into the official nomenclature in one way or another. I think that's a time honored challenge of how many puns or double entendres or something like that you can do that, because everybody you're trying to inject a little fun into this otherwise somewhat serious topic area. But so you go back. I mean, so you kind of told me about you've come from the intelligence aspect, applying humans to this field, and I think that is exactly at the root of all these problems in computers is eventually humans. So that analysis is obviously interesting to a lot of folks because you can see a lot of insights into it. And speaking of those humans, tell me a little bit about the kinds of folks that normally attend your courses. You've given them enough names now. You probably have a pretty good feel for who's this course right for.
Sure. Certainly there's been military intelligence professionals who've taken it who are they're starting from the intelligence side. Okay, figure out how to do their job on cyber, the cybersecurity realm. Certainly the people in enterprises, who are trying to kind of up their level to really kind of produce the communication that their executives want or their boards want, right? The last trainer was talking about how important it is for communication. Well, I mean, the bosses, the CEOs, the board doesn't really want to see, a report out of IDA on malware. They want to know, it's like, okay, is this an organized group and what are they trying to steal? And to do that, you've kind of figure out what you can learn from the data, what you can't learn from the data. And I mean, I don't teach this in the context of my course, but the most important thing is, your ability to communicate that in a way that makes sense to whoever is consuming it. If you're an intelligence agency, there's a policymaker behind it, right? If you're an enterprise, there's a CISO or board, whoever behind it. If you're a security company, there's, the business buyers of whatever products you have. If you're trying to explain it to the media, there was a stint for 2 or 3 years or so where a lot of I were involved in, I was very frequently in contact with the media, and right, how do you explain it? And not just explain it, actually, this is the few times I was also vetting other people's reporting, because the stories were that kind of importance, where they take their, one set of professionals and they give the data to another set to say, all right, show me if this is real or not. So communication.
That's just good engineering practice. You should always get somebody to check your numbers.
No, and
second opinion for medical. There's lots of. I think it's a good practice. Didn't mean to cut you off.
It never occurred to me that would happen, right? But it's for as much as people want to critique the press and things they get wrong, and I did just 5 minutes ago, right? There are a lot of journalists who take this very seriously on certainly the important stories and say, all right, I want someone else to vet this stuff to tell me that this is legit, and that does happen. So I mean, in 2016, I was involved in all the election-related hacking investigations, right? And talk about outsized importance, because we're still talking about that in the United States 4 years later. There's a lot of talk about it in Europe
now.
Right now, and so it's. There's a lot of very interesting, like I said, high-level cases that you can get involved in really quick. Where this really becomes important, and obviously not every incident in a SOC you would apply these kind of details, but at a certain point, being able to spot trends and what your attackers are doing and how they're trying to get in. You know, I do a lot of pro bono case for like private individuals. So I get, probably the biggest thing that people bring to me like off the street is business email compromise, right? Of people trying to steal housing payments for mortgages, which is usually the biggest dollar transaction any normal person involved in. And, you know, knowing how they operate, it'd be like, okay, you know, they tell me all this stuff. It's like, there's only really one data point I want to know is go look in the forwarding rules of Gmail or Yahoo or whatever you're using and see where they're forwarding the emails. It's like, well, there's nothing in there. It's like, yeah, there is, because that's how they're viewing your email. And they take a look, oh, it's forwarding off to this Gmail address. Okay, well, I know to talk to Google to start dealing with this problem. You know, and yeah, both, like I said, the experience of, okay, this is how this actor operates, so I know what they're putting in place, but also know the other organizations involved and having those networks to be able to talk to an organization like Google, right? A company that isn't very easy to talk to or accessible to say, hey, you know, there's an email over here that's being used for business email compromise, you know, and use that to sit there and enumerate hundreds or thousands of other ones and start disrupting entire networks that ultimately save people lots of money, right? Or saving them from being theft of lots of money. It's
a real problem these days. We're seeing such a ransomware boom. I mean, you know, the UHS compromise, so much stuff. And I think you're absolutely right. That's kind of an important lore. It's the tech companies are notoriously bad for being unreachable and for hiding behind web forms. So knowing how to do that. So give me a little feel of the kinds. I mean, the question where I'm going to is I'm trying to establish what's the kind of the skill set of folks that going into your course. I'm going to ask you. Give me a little feel for the kinds of exercises you have. Do you have a little? You have some kind of little sample or anything that you wanted to go through today? Before I go to that, I'm going to ask you, you know, what's sort of the minimum you must be this tall to ride this ride to join your course? What are some basic skills that you think you need to be able to get value out of it?
I think understanding basic networking, right, is you know, an IP address and port, a little bit about how DNS works, just because DNS is just, you know, you'll learn a lot about an organization just on what DNS records there are. And there's a lot that can be inferred and observed in DNS, right? And there's a couple of things I'm working on that by next month I might be able to integrate into the course and demonstrate. You know, you don't have to be an expert in DNS, you know, don't have to be an expert in networking, but kind of understand, okay, this is how it works. And, you know, I can find this stuff at layer 7 versus layer 4, layer 3. A little bit about malware. You don't have to be a reverse engineer, but you know a little bit about it. You know, you mentioned one family of it, ransomware. I'm integrating a little bit of cryptocurrency stuff, but mostly it's you know, it's the public ledger and the resources to query it. It would be helpful if you had a VM. Almost all the exercises I do are on AWS images. I give access to the course. There is some Python. But I provide most of that. So there isn't any real coding that would help you obviously do some more automated processing for intelligence. But by and large, I kind of show my work, so to speak, and the tools are there to kind of repeat the process that I teach. So I try not to be too high, right? You know, in terms of you must have 10 years experience in a CISSP, but some basic understanding of networking, of cybersecurity, and the kind of threats that are going on, and everything else. I try to build up from there.
Cool. That's great. That sets the expectation really well. So, you know, we've talked about the kind of students and where they should be at. When you get folks giving you feedback afterwards, what do you think are some of the big takeaways that folks will get powered up on after they leave your course?
Well, I think the last time I taught this course, it was actually one-off, but it was for Amazon and Google, right? And, you know, both who have just immense data sets, more than I have to work with. and the hope is, every organization is different, right? Every organization has different business goals, right? You take the difference between Amazon and Google and what they sell and the resources they have and what they need to protect. They went back and said, hey, what this gave me ideas that if I looked at this data like this, or I started collecting this data and doing analytics, or went deeper and combined this with this, I could start getting more visibility into what adversaries are doing. I might get better detection. Because there is no one size fits all in security, besides of, hey, go run antivirus or get an EDR tool or get a firewall with integrated threat intel or whatever, what really organizations need that have the resources to work with it is people who can think about things and understand, okay, this is the data set that I operate on, right, of Google, right? You have the entire Gmail infrastructure. To go back to my business email compromise, right? If I'm looking for interesting forwarding rules, like multiple Gmail accounts that are forwarding to the same place, but only on specific keywords, now you could start finding all of the crime in Google, for instance. Amazon, you've got AWS, right? And S3 buckets is a great example of this, right? There was 2-3 years ago. The researcher, his name forgets me, but basically, all he did was keep enumerating S3 buckets that were open to the world and says, here, look at all this data. Here,
so much juicy stuff. Yeah.
Here, right? Yeah. To where Amazon started making it more difficult to set up S3 buckets that were just open to the world. So Amazon started making changes, and I don't know if I would take that approach unless extremely frustrated, but was able to affect change by, finding flaws in mass of all this new technology that we're putting out there, right? There's the rush to the cloud, right? Because the cloud's secure. Well, no one is breaking into an Amazon data center. Yes, that is true. But if you set up an EC2 image or an S3 image and you don't secure it, that's on you. That's not on Amazon. Amazon's not going to do your job for you. So now, there's this interesting gap between how we would have protected it if it's in our own infrastructure and have all the people in monitoring, and now, how you monitor stuff in AWS and get information on attacks. Well, that looks very different, and you don't have all the same tools.
There's a kind of a crack you can fall into there. You don't have all the local stuff, but it's disconnected. That's an certainly interesting dilemma you point out.
Yeah, I mean, just audit trails of who's creating and deleting images, right? Shadow IT. You made reference to UHS, but I mean, almost every breach in the last 2 years has been shadow IT because an organization's cloud account is so permissive that almost anybody can spin up an image. And that assumes that they just don't spin it up and just put it on the corporate card for reimbursement. By the way, the corporate data is still there and needs to be protected. And
this all hits really close to home for me as we make the transition, like everybody right now, into virtualized infrastructure for conferences and distribution. It's been a learning curve for me all the time. I'm putting more stuff into Azure and AWS than I ever have before to do multicast or streaming, all kinds of stuff. And that basic job of securing, I like to think I'm fairly competent on the local side of things, but I'm a newbie when it comes to the cloud stuff too, and I'm learning there all the time myself. There's all kinds of things that you point out there.
Yeah, I mean, we're all newbies, right?
Yeah. It's a brave
couple years ago. Who heard of Kubernetes?
Exactly, and you are the perfect straight man because you know where we're going next on this call. Because I see Jay showed up. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the great thing about this industry is it's always changing. We create more problems in technology than we solve, right? And you mentioned Zoom, right? As everybody went to Zoom in February and March and April,
and we had the open
Zoom
Zoom
problem. There were a bunch of attacks on Zoom.
Yeah, the Zoom bombing because everybody was shipping around or not putting password on their meetings, and they had the same response and making passwords mandatory and forcing you to jump through a few hoops, like the authentication hoops folks had to jump through for this particular Zoom call, etc.
Yeah.
So I think you've given us a really good flavor of what's going on in your course and where you're going through it. Let's see if there's any folks that have any questions here.
Sure.
We've got a few folks that dropped off, and I think with that. So, do you any final words for folks and things that I should material for me to edit put on the website? Messages for your prospective students.
I think, like I said, the idea is to kind of create an analyst mindset of how to look at it and find kind of the most important data points to help tell you, okay, what are the most likely attackers going to do, how they're going to do it, so that you can start, right sizing your defenses, right? Is that no organization really has unlimited funds, right? So you need to sit there and use things wisely. And we've got tools that everybody has, right? Every organization is going to have some endpoint tool. They're going to have firewalls. They're going to have Splunk, right? Where are the gaps, right? Because everyone talks about gap analysis, but figure out, okay, how are attackers exploiting that? And what can I put in place to really improve the security posture? And often there's a lot of very straightforward and simple ways that people can improve the security of the organization, or at least improve detection. Because, as you know, as anybody who's been in security knows, is for all of these breaches, the attacker is in a network for like on the enterprise level, for the significant ones you're talking about, they're in place for months, stealing all the data, doing whatever, until they finally get caught. What we need to get better is turning that months into hours and minutes. And like I said, there's a human being at the other end of the keyboard, and human beings are creatures of habits, even criminals. We learn those habits. We can find ways to detect them quicker, boot them out of networks, and prevent things like massive ransomware outbreaks, right? I have a couple of colleagues who found some interesting DNS tricks to proactively notify people, hey, you're about to be hit with some major ransomware. You should take some concrete steps, and has saved organizations from being hit like UHS has.
That's awesome, John. I one of the reasons I'm honored to work with all of you folks who are like experienced instructors, because you make my job easy. You digest the material into something that's easy to communicate. So communicating that to folks is awesome, easy. I know already just from the stuff you're editing this for the website, it's going to be super easy to package into something that's easily understandable, because you do a great job of that, sir.
Thank you.
All right.